Rose isn't just an episode, it's an experience.
It is as brilliant as a way to bring back Doctor Who.
Something that will hold up in the modern day.
Rose is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most important episodes of Doctor Who ever.
Rose is a really great start to the modern series. So, for me, Rose is a really great start to the modern series, a really great way to introduce the characters. As a episode, as a story on its own, maybe it fares a little bit less, but it's still really, really good. I gave it a rewatch last night, at time of recording, and it still holds up very well as its own standalone story, but it works even better as the opening of the revised series, a new first episode of the show, and a great way to reintroduce the series. It's not a reboot, it's a return, a revival, so to speak, as it's still the same show that started back in 1963, and whilst an Unearthly Child, specifically part 1, was a really great way to introduce the characters, the setting, the premise of the show in a simple, easy introductory episode, and then the remaining 3 episodes kind of carried that idea forward. And then the series, as it progressed further, develops that. With this one, it tries to do that a bit more with the one episode, but it's got the advantage of being double length, as it's 45 minutes, so it has more time to develop the characters. It's also taking the premise of the companion being the audience figure character, in this case Rose Tyler, and as it introduces her, the audience gets to see and enter the Doctor's world from her point of view. A bit like with Ian and Barbara in the original An Unearthly Child. But this time, the Doctor's adventures have kind of already started. You could argue that with An Unearthly Child, but this one, even more so. And I like the way how it's integrating Rose's journey as a character, as a person, through the episode. Of course, it's going to develop more over the next series and the following series after that, over these first 2 seasons. But I like the way how it starts with just a simple introduction episode, introducing this character who we're going to follow for 2 series, and also how it introduces the Doctor as a mysterious figure, just like in the older series, but this time kind of he's been around a lot more, and he's a lot more mysterious, and we're introducing him as an alien who can travel through time and space in a really great way. And also, like An Unearthly Child, it also takes a lot of inspiration from the 1970 story Spearhead in Space, and there is also quite a bit of good similarities between the 2 stories, but also fairly good differences. It's a story introducing a new Doctor, but this time more from the companion's perspective, whilst Spearhead was also introducing the companion in a different direction. They kind of got introduced simultaneously, whilst this time it's Rose, then the Doctor, and we'll see more of the Doctor be fleshed out more over Series 1. I think the first 2 episodes are very good at establishing the 9th Doctor as a character, particularly, and then later on we'll see more of that, like in Dalek. I also like how the story is very much grounded down to present day setting. It's taking a lot of inspiration from the late 80s stories like Survival, and takes inspiration from soaps and also American TV like Buffy the Vampire Slayer to ground the series with a more realistic approach. So you've got Rose's mum, you've got her boyfriend Mickey. It also brings that 70s Third Doctor era style of the alien invasion in present day London specifically, but present day Earth, and it does a lovely blend of weaving all of these elements together, as well as keeping the core character of the Doctor still there.
The element that I think Rose does very well is the character of Clive, played by Mark Benton. Clive in the episode helps out Rose after she's had the first 2 encounters with the Doctor and still needs answers. Here, Clive shows her the evidence of this mysterious doctor. Clive in this part of the episode is supposed to represent the fan part of the audience, where he, in the episode, shows Rose this evidence. You could possibly interpret this as the fans trying to show these new viewers that yes, there is a history to this character. And true, the scene like the later Target novelization could have shown old pictures of William Hartnell, Tom Baker, or, heaven forbid, Paul McGann. But gladly, Russell puts restraint and introduces the idea, but doesn't really run fully with it. Also, can we just talk about Mark Benton's performance? He, like Christopher Eccleston, is another The Second Coming cast member moving over to Doctor Who, and I think he was just perfectly cast as Clive. According to the writer's tale, they did try to get Mackenzie Crook into the role, which I could see working, but Mark just makes the character his own in so many ways that I can't really see the character working in any other way.
When bringing back the show in 2005, Russell was faced with a number of challenges, shifting Doctor Who's unfair perception of this kitsch show with wobbly sets and bad special effects to something that will hold up in the modern day. Now, although I don't think Russell managed to nail the tone with everything, I think the Autons made for the perfect introductory villain when establishing this new era of the show, with the episode Rose acting as an almost modern interpretation of the 1970s classic Spearhead from Space. However, whereas in previous appearances where the plot would revolve around the Autons as a threat, exploring their plans and how they set out to orchestrate them, Rose has them take more of a back seat role, and for obvious reasons. This episode isn't titled Terror of the Autons, it's Rose, so primarily the focus is going to be on her, and I think that was the right call. That doesn't mean, however, that the Autons are necessarily handed the short end of the stick. I think the episode does a great job of weaving them throughout the narrative, as we learn bits and pieces about the Doctor and the titular Rose.
The Autons have always been a favourite of mine. They're a terrifically simple concept, yet perfect for that style of horror that Doctor Who is aiming for. They're one of those lightning in a bottle ideas that I honestly don't think get enough credit today. Yes, they're not on the same level as the Daleks, Cybermen, or even the Weeping Angels, but they don't have to be. It's that simplicity that makes them the perfect monster to relaunch this type of show with.
Plastic. It's all around us, from our toys to the bottles we drink from, to the monitor or phone that you're probably watching this on now.
Every time you walk up the high street, the chances are you will see shop window dummies standing tall, and just for a second you will remember feeling like a kid again, believing that these things are more than just mannequins, and that they could get you at any given point.
Mannequins in particular have been a staple in horror for years. I love that first scene where Rose goes down into the basement and all of the dummies start animating and walking towards her. Genuinely terrifying stuff. And that's before you even get to stuff like the arm, dustbin, or Auton Mickey. Side note, I'm sorry Rose babes, but how do you not notice that that isn't Noel Clarke? Then again, you're probably going to be safer with the duplicate. Something else which I find interesting in this story, and I think throughout most of New Who, is that they're never actually referred to as being Autons. It's always the Nestine, the greater consciousness which controls the Auton soldiers. I don't know if it was tied up with some kind of copyright issue, but it's something I've always picked up on when rewatching this story. But those are the main three ways that we see the Nestine appear throughout the story, until we get to the big evil pile of soup at the end. Now I do think this is one of the weaker elements when it comes to the depiction of the Nestine and Rose. First off, this ain't a little squid guy, and also not to nitpick, but how did this get here? I know that Doctor Who logic is very just go with it at times, and this isn't a problem with the story overall, but it does get me scratching my head a little. Also, the Doctor defeating them in such an easy way is a little underwhelming. Although it is funny that the Doctor just has this stuff seemingly in abundance in case he ever runs into the Nestine. I mean, it's not the end of the world, because that's the next story. They're an episode 1 villain. They're not supposed to be the biggest, baddest, hardest to defeat villains in the universe, and honestly, I'm glad about that. When we see those shop window dummies smashing the glass, it's everything that it needs to be. It's such a perfect and iconic visual from their first story, and I'm glad that it's something they call back to. But now with a bit of money behind the show, we can see what these guys are truly made of. Which of course, as we know, is plastic.
I think you've waffled on long enough.
Yeah, you're probably right. Take it away, Jerry.
Thanks, Jean. So, unfortunately my laptop broke, so I'm stuck in the void for now, which means my editing and recording capabilities are limited. But since I'm stuck here, I might as well share some of my thoughts on Rose. Rose is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most important episodes of Doctor Who ever. Personally, I think it is a shining example of everything a pilot should be, or episode 1 to a TV show. What I wanted to do was explore the dramatic themes of the episode, touch on the subtle foreshadowing throughout, and delve into what makes Rose such a successful episode 1 to the revival. But, since being stuck in the void, there's only one scene, or rather one clip, no, just one frame from the entire episode that is burned into the back of my skull, and sadly, I have no choice but to overanalyze this one singular framed view for the next minute or so. Shortly after escaping the Autons at the start of the episode, Rose and the Doctor escape into a lift, and for the record, that is just such a good idea from a writing perspective, since it gives what is otherwise a high-intensity scene a moment to breathe, enabling the Doctor and Rose to have a quick conversation. So, the audience can get a feel for the characters and see how they interact. However, when they eventually leave the lift, the Doctor does something that has haunted me for years. On paper, it seems harmless. The Doctor uses his trusty sonic to damage the call switch of the lift, or elevator if you're an American, and they run away. Not that deep, right? Or is it? You see, there are actually several disturbing things about this frame. Let me explain. Let's start with the obvious. Why is the sonic screwdriver projecting that light pattern? Following this episode, the particular model of sonic screwdriver used in this episode does not produce this triangular light beam effect. Now, you might be thinking that I've said nothing that crazy, but bear in mind, this is the first time we've seen this sonic, and it displays an effect we never see again. Even later in the episode, we no longer see this effect. Now, I propose two possible reasons for this. Firstly, it could have been a case of them trying out an effect, not liking it, and never using it again. Or alternatively, it was used as a visual aid to the viewer to help understand that the sonic was causing the call switch to spark and smoke. But that raises its own problems. The sonic screwdriver uses sonic waves to tamper with equipment, hence why it is making a sound. So this visualization of the light attacking the control switch implicates it is actually some form of light beam that is doing the damage, which we know is not the case, hence why the scene is actually quite misleading when you think about it. But it doesn't stop there. The Doctor tells Rose to mind her eyes. Why? Does he say this because he's actually aware of the light effect that it's about to use? Or is he simply just warning her about the sparks from the switch that are about to be caused? Maybe it's both, but that's not what's actually important here. The important bit is, why is he doing this in the first place? Well, to stop the Autons, of course. Right? Well, no, not really. First, I think it's safe to assume that there are probably stairs nearby, and that the Autons might already be on their way up, so he could actually be wasting his time here. But more importantly, why would he destroy the call switch specifically? I tried doing some research into the functionality of lifts. What have I become? And although it might not be impossible, simply breaking the call switch will only mean that nobody can use the lift from that floor. It's likely that the Autons could have still operated the lift from the basement, and there seems to be no sign that the lift itself is disabled by this action the Doctor performs. And it isn't to stop anybody else using the lift from going down there, since he's about to blow the building up in just a few moments. Now, maybe the Doctor just thought that this would disable the whole lift, and maybe it did, and we just didn't see it. However, it still made me raise a lot of questions. And just putting the icing on the top, I want to point out this fire sign to the right-hand side of the frame, almost foreshadowing the electrical fire he is about to cause within the next few seconds. So I guess I did get to talk about foreshadowing in the end. Huh. Anyway, I'm just going to disappear back into the void now and think some more about this. You know where to find me if you need me.
I am the only member of the Whoniversals that can claim that this was my first full episode of Doctor Who. Some members remembered bits and pieces of their first watch through, but for me, this was the first piece of Doctor Who that I watched from beginning to end. It is as brilliant as a way to bring back Doctor Who after it being off the air for about 15 years. Also, that scene with Nine and Rose being talked on how the Doctor feeling the edge, just feeling Earth and time itself. That was such a great scene. It is an episode with admittedly dated effects, but I think that is part of the RTD1 charm of it, of having that dated feel of it. perfect dynamic of Nine and Rose, and it's starting off a journey of a lifetime.
I wonder why Will didn't take part in the Rose review. I better check his account. Will? Oh. Well, that can't be good.